I'm glad you're here. My name is Artimisa, and I welcome you to Stories in the Dark. I am your storyteller for today, and I have a story to tell. You ask if it's scary? Oh, my dear, that is up to you to decide. I'm just here to tell it. Allow me to begin my story. The Poison Ring. Backpack. Kehret. The antique business was fun until the burglaries began. After school on Saturday, I work at my mom's store. Offline antiques. When I arrived last Friday, Mom said someone burglarized Rosie's Posies and the theater last night. They took Rosie's computer, cases of candy from the theater, and cash from both places. Claire, a teller at the corner bank, came in on her break. After we discussed the burglaries, Claire said, "You called about a catering? She collect cat items, so Mom, alert her when you have something she might want." Mom handed the ring to Claire. The top of the ring was an oval-shaped tile with a black and white cat painted on it. "It's a poison ring," Mom said. "Circa 1820. Claire looked up. Poison? See the hidden clasp? It opens. Mom demonstrated how the top of the ring lifted up, revealing a secret compartment. The rings were made to hide poison, Mom said, although they were often used to carry a loved one's lock of hair. "How much is it?" She and Mom settled on a price, and Claire wore the ring back to work. A frail white-haired woman carrying a faded paisley tote bag came in. "What did you bring today, Mrs. Pomeron?" Mom asked. "More things from Maud." She removed a brass candlestick from the bag, followed by a stained rag doll that was missing half her hair. When Mrs. Pomeron had first come to the shop months earlier, she had brought treasured keepsakes. Her eyes often filled with tears as she told where she and her late husband had purchased a particular item. Every piece she bought had a history, and Mom bought them all. After a while, her personal stories stopped, and she began selling us her sister's belongings. The quality of the goods gradually got worse. But Mom still purchased some items from Mrs. Pomeron because she felt sorry for her. The woman always wore the same frayed sweater and she had memory problems. She probably needs the money, Mom said. Mrs. Pomeron took an old tin Santa out of her bag. I'll take Santa, Mom said, but not the rest. The candlestick isn't old and the doll is in poor condition. I'll be back tomorrow, Mrs. Pomeron said, as Mom paid for Santa. This was all I could carry. I could go to your sister's house, Mom said, and buy what I can use. You can't do that, Mrs. Pomeron said. Oh no, you mustn't do that. When we left that day, we double-checked the doors to be sure they were locked, but we still feel uneasy knowing that the burglar had struck so close by. We considered spending the night in the shop, but Mom decided we couldn't let fear rule our lives. The next morning, we got more bad news. The bank where Claire works has been robbed at closing time. The night before, the robber took a bag of money as well as cash and jewelry from customers and bank personnel. A teller pushed a hidden alarm, but the police arrived after the robber has fled. Surveillance video of the suspect in a ski mask and black coat was hazy. Claire stopped in on her lunch hour. It was awful, she said. He only got $15 in cash from me, but he took my grandmother's watch and the cat ring that I bought from you. She paused a moment, then added, it was horrible to see that gun pointed at me. I could see the cold look in his eyes, and I knew he would pull the trigger if anyone refused to cooperate. I shuddered, imagining the scene. Mrs. Pomeron came again on Monday when she removed a pearl necklace from her bag. Mom said, tell me about your sister. Maud was the oldest than Jimmy, then me. Now I'm the only one left. I blurted out, your sister died? Oh yes, dear, Mrs. Pomeron said. Maud's been gone 10 years. Mom and I glanced at each other. Mrs. Pameron didn't remember telling us that she was selling her sister's items because Maud planned to move. Mom said, "I can't buy from you for a while. I'm sorry. I need to sell some merchandise before I add more." Mrs. Pameron gasped and put one hand over her mouth. Her eyes darted towards the door, as if she feared someone might hear our conversation. "But what will I do?" she asked. "If you need money for living expenses," Mom said, "there are agencies who will help you. Why don't you give me your phone number? I am not staying at home now. I don't have a telephone." After she left, Mom said, "I hated to do that, but I don't like to buy items unless I know where they came from." "If her sister's been dead for years," I said, "where did she get the stuff she brought in?" "Exactly. If it was her own, she wouldn't need to lie." Mom had a dentist appointment Tuesday, so I was alone in the shop when a young man entered. "Let me talk to the owner." "She isn't here," I said. "I could have called you when she gets back." "Give her a message," he said. "Tell her I don't appreciate the way she treated my aunt." "Your aunt?" "Aunt Martha brought antiques to sell and she was turned away." "You're Mrs. Pameron's nephew?" I asked. He seemed surprised that I knew the name. "Mom has bought a lot of items from her," I said, "but we're overstocked now." He picked up a glass toothpick holder and turned it over to see the price. "You and your mother offered drugstore prices to an old woman who isn't right in the head, and then you called them valuable antiques and jack up the price." I wanted to protest, but I decided I shouldn't argue with him. He seemed jumpy and angry. I wondered if he was on drugs. He gazed up around the shop. What a scam. He threw the toothpick holder to the floor where it shattered. "Hey," I said, "you will have to pay for that." But he had already stormed out, leaving the door open. My hand shook as I closed the door, and I swept up the broken glass. Mom returned. We debated whether or not to tell the police about the incident. We decided not to, knowing it would be my word against the nephews, who would probably insist the broken toothpick holder was an accident. I was in class the next morning when Mom's friend Susan came to get me. Someone broke into Offline Antiques last night, she said as she drove me to the shop. Nothing was stolen, but the shop was trashed. Mom was talking to a police officer when I arrived. We took the cash box and my laptop home last night, she told him. We thought those were the only items of ours that the thief would want. Warning had been spray painted on the glass display cabinet, and a beautiful carved grandfather's clock had been tipped over so that it crashed into a shelf of fine china, breaking not only the clock but dozens of old Haviland and Wedgwood plates. An oak table that displayed red wing pottery has been overturned. Vintage postcards that Mom had carefully sorted by topic were in a heap on the floor. It was probably the same person who robbed the flower shop, the theater, and the bank, the officer said. Maybe he vandalized the store because he was angry when he didn't find cash or any items that are easily sold on the street. Are you insured? Yes, but most antiques are irreplaceable. Have you had problems with a customer recently? Is there who has a grudge on you? I told him about Mrs. Pomeran's nephew. I don't know his name, I said. We'll look into it, the officer said. Instead of going back to school, I helped Mom clean up the mess. After we swept up the broken china and hauled the clock pieces to the dumpster and alley, I felt antsy. At 2:30, Mom said it was okay for me to leave. I needed to buy a notebook and some art supplies for a school project. After I did my shopping, I got in line at Starbucks when the young woman ahead of me reached for her change and I saw the cat ring on her finger. I told myself not to jump into conclusions. Many antiques are reproduced, cheap imitation of poison rings and probably being cranked out in China and imported by hundreds. I need a closer look. As the woman collected her coffee, I stepped out of line so that I could watch her. She was alone. When she set her coffee down to add cream to it, I stood beside her and reached for a napkin. As she stirred cream into her coffee, I studied the ring. The band had the burnished patina of old gold and fine age lines were visible in the painted tile. I clearly saw the small clasp on the side with the lid open. It was an antique poison ring with a cat painted on the tile, and I was sure it belonged to Claire. When the woman left Starbucks, I followed, staying near other shoppers so she would notice me. I hoped to get the license plate number of her car. I removed my cell phone from my backpack and slipped it into my pocket where I could grab it quickly to call the police. The bank robber has been a man. but this woman probably knew who he was. She broke into a run, waving at the city bus. As she boarded, I raced forward. The driver waited for me. I walked to the seat in the bank where I could watch the woman. We rode for 10 minutes before she got off. I was afraid I would be too obvious if I exited with her, so I stayed on the bus and watched to see where she went. The woman entered a small brick apartment building. I got out at the next corner and walked back. The sign on the building said, "Serene Homes for Seniors." She must be visiting someone. Well, it was a clue. The police could talk to the residents and learn who had company today. I went inside a row of mailboxes with apartment numbers and the names of residents on them, lined on one wall. I began copying the names into my notebook. I had written down about half of the names when the door to the closest apartment opened. I looked up and froze. Mrs. Pomeran's nephew stared at me. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I'm working on a school project. I have to interview someone who remembers World War II. He came forward and stood beside me. "You came to talk to Aunt Martha." "She lives here?" "I didn't know that." "Go inside." He pointed towards the open apartment door. I backed away from him toward the outside door. "I need to get home," I said. "You aren't going anywhere." He grabbed my arm and jerked me towards the room. "Help!" I yelled. He yanked harder, showed me inside the apartment, and slammed the door. He turned a deadbolt lock. The woman I had followed was sitting on a sofa, watching Oprah and eating a candy bar. Mrs. Pomeran sat at a round dining table. She smiled and she saw me. "Hello, dear," she said, as if I visited regularly. The young woman muted the TV and looked at me. "Who's she?" she asked. "Her mother owns one of the stores that buy antiques from Aunt Martha." "One of the stores? Mrs. Pomeran sells to other shops besides ours. Mom will be interested in that piece of news." "I saw her in Starbucks," the woman said, "and on the bus." "I knew it. She followed you. She suspects us, Brittany." The woman turned off the TV. "How could she suspect anything?" she asked. "Why else would she follow you here?" "Suspects you of what?" I said. "It was her," Brittany said, pointing at Mrs. Pomeran. She raised her hand as if to slap Mrs. Pomeran. The old woman cringed. "No," I cried. "She didn't tell me anything. I don't know what you're talking about." Brittany lowered her hand. "Regardless of how much she knows," the man said, "this changes the plan. We need to rob the other bank and leave town today. Now." "What about the girl?" "We'll take her along. As soon as we do the bank, we'll get rid of her." "Get rid of her now, Todd." Brittany's voice was like ice. "There are too many people close by. Even the old duffers in this building would hear A gunshot. "Help!" I yelled. I tried again to reach the door. "Help me!" Todd grabbed the dish towel and gagged me with it. I kicked at him. He held my hands and behind my back while Brittany cut the TV cord and used it to bind my hands. "What are you doing to Maud?" Mrs. Pamarin asked. "It's a game, Aunt Martha. You're going to play too." The man tied her hands to the chair back with a lamp cord. "I don't like this game," Mrs. Pamarin said. Brittany removed a wad of money from Mrs. Pamarin's bag. "That's my share," Mrs. Pamarin said. "You put that back." Brittany stuffed the cash in her purse. Todd put on a long black coat. "Where are you going?" Mrs. Pamarin asked. "To your house," he said. "I want to go too," she said. "No, you don't," I thought, "and neither do I." Brittany opened the door and peered into the hallway. "All clear," she said. "I'm right behind you with a gun," Todd told me. "So don't try anything." Please, I thought. Please somebody see me. But the other apartment doors remained closed. We walked to a parked white car. Todd opened the back door. I got in. "Lie down," Brittany said. I did. Todd got in the front passenger seat and she slid behind the wheel. I lay on my side facing the front seat. I twisted my hands back and forth, trying to loosen the cord. The movement soon chafed my wrist, but I kept trying. When the car stopped, Todd pulled a black ski mask over his face. "Maybe I should keep the gun," Brittany said, "to control the girl." "I'm not going in there unarmed," he said. Brittany looked over her shoulders at me. I held still. "You can always use your knife," he said. They both looked at the window. "Now," she said. He got out. She twisted in her seat, watching me. I lay motionless. I knew if she caught me trying to get my hands untied, she'd make sure it didn't happen. 5 minutes later, the front door opened and Todd leaped in. "Got it," he said. Brittany floored the accelerator and the car shot forward. The tires squealed as she took a corner too fast. A horn honked. I twisted my hands frantically. "There were only 2 customers," Todd said as he removed the mask, and they both dropped to the floor as soon as I told them to. The teller was terrified. When I showed her the note, she handed over a bag of bills. Neither of them paid attention to me. I squeezed my fingers together, making my hand small as I could. The knot loosened tight slightly, just enough for me to free my hands. I slid my right hand into my pocket and opened my phone. I couldn't call with a gag in my mouth, but I could send a text message. I found the center key with my index finger, then slid my finger to the left and pressed. I visualized the keyboard and typed "helped." Next I typed "bank robber." Last I typed "Mrs. Pam, nephew." I pressed center again. I knew this brought up my list of phone numbers. Mom was the first on the list, so I hit center again to send my message to her. I looked out the window hoping to recognize a landmark so that I could tell Mom where I was. I only saw a stoplight. "Stay green, baby, stay green," Todd said. We roared to the intersection. I kept watching them. When I spotted the tip of 2 golden acres, I sent MacD. I saw the red and white logo of the Target store and texted Target. Nobody behind us, Todd said. No lights, no sirens. We did it, Brittany said. A few minutes later, Todd said, left at the corner where the sign says Lake Elgin. Aunt Marta's house is in about 2 miles. 2 miles. That didn't give the police enough time to find me. Panic rose in my throat. I remembered Todd's words. We'll get rid of her after we rob the bank. Soon, Todd said, is the gravel driveway on the right. Park down the dock. The car slowed. The bumpy road curved several times. Let's shoot her in the car and push it into the waters, Brittany said. We'll be rid of the girl and the gateway car at the same time. Hey, this is a good car. We'll shoot her and dump the body off the dock. I couldn't believe how calmly they discussed my murder. Had they killed before? The car stopped. Let's get over with, Todd said. They both got out. I slipped my hands back into the knotted cord. I needed more time. I had to stall. Brittany opened the back door. Out, she said. I said as I got out. Ungag her, Todd said. No one can hear her yell now. Brittany took the dish towel out of my mouth. When your aunt dies, you'll inherit this house, I said. What? Said Todd. She put it in her will. What about her daughter? She said you visit her and she wants you to have everything. Brittany looked at the classic old house, the wide lawn, the lake view. This place is worth a fortune, she said. When did my aunt discuss her affairs with you? Todd asked. Sometimes she has tea with my mom and me. One day she asked Mom to recommend an attorney because she wanted to rewrite her will. Mom's brother is a lawyer, and he handled it. Todd hung on every word, believing my lies. Where is this new will? He asked. My uncle has the original. He was afraid your aunt would lose her copy, so Mom kept it at her laptop. If you take me there, I'll show it to you. She's trying to trick you into taking her home, Brittany said. Uncle Zach estimated the value of Mrs. Pamarant's estate at $850,000, I said. She's leaving it all to you. Todd's jaw dropped. Forget Phoenix, he said. We should stay here and be nice to Aunt Marta. She could live another 20 years, Brittany said. Unless we help her along, Todd said. She takes 12 pills every day. It could be easy to overdose on the wrong combination. He said it so nonchalantly, as if we were discussing what to have for dinner. Brittany looked at the house again. It gets too hot in Phoenix, she said. We need to get that will. Then we'll go to Auntie's apartment and help her take her medicine. An ancient Ford was parked next to the house. "We'll take Aunt Marta's car," Todd said. "In case the cops are looking for mine." She leaves the keys in. This time, Todd drove. As I lay down on the back seat, I picked at my phone, hoping to see a message from Mom saying that help was on the way. My phone was dark. My battery needed to recharge. My text has never been sent. Fear and despair washed over me. As soon as Todd and Brittany realized there wasn't any will, I knew they'd shoot me. Brittany said, let's go," and the Ford shot forward. Seconds later, Todd swore and hit the brake. I sat up. 2 squad cars, blue lights swirling, blocked our path. "Police!" yelled a voice. "Get out with your hands in the air." 2 officers approached. "Stay down," Todd told Brittany. She put her head on her knees. He grabbed the gun and rolled down his window. He was going to shoot the police. As he raised the gun, I attacked from behind. My hands circled his throat, jerking his head backward. The gun fired into the air. Todd struggled. I held on. He pointed the gun over his shoulder at me. Bang! I heard the bullet whiz past my ear and shatter the back window. Brittany looked up and dug her nails into my arm, trying to pull my hand away. Bang! This shot came from behind the Ford. One officer had sneaked around and approached from the rear. Todd yelped and dropped the gun. Police quickly surrounded us. "It's your fault," Brittany cried. "We could have been rich." An officer read Todd and Brittany their rights. They were frisked and handcuffed, and Todd's minor arm wound was treated. The officer took my name and I asked if I was okay. "Yes, they were going to kill me. You saved my life, and you saved ours too," he replied. "Is there an older hostage too?" "No." "How did you know I was here?" "We didn't. A police detective followed a tip from a burglary victim and went to question the owner of this property. He found her tied up in her apartment. She said her nephew had kidnapped her sister and was taking her to this address." "Mrs. Cameron gets confused," I said. "She thought I was Maud." My picture was in the paper the next day under the headline, "Teen catches robber, prevents cop shooting." The article said that Todd and Brittany had committed 20 burglaries plus the bank robberies. The trunk of the car contained an assault rifle, 3 laptops, and a bag of cocaine. They sold most of the stolen goods themselves to pawn shops or on eBay and Craigslist, but used Mrs. Cameron as fence for antiques. They took advantage of her confusion by pretending the goods belonged to Maud. When the reporter contacted Mrs. Cameron's daughter, who lived in another state, she came immediately to help her mother. That afternoon, Claire came into the shop. "Look," she said, holding out her hand. "The poison ring." The police found it by the sink in Mrs. Pamaron's apartment. Rosie got her computer back too, all because you spotted my ring and followed that awful woman. Which she should not have done, Mom said. I grinned. After 6 days of fear, the antique business was fun again. The end. How did you like that story? It wasn't too scary, right? But can you imagine yourself being captured, tied and gagged at the back of a car, knowing that you could die anytime soon? Like this poor soul. That's all for today. A new storyteller will be here to replace me and tell you another story for stories.